Right, so we're talking about statutory payments this morning on the chamber, and my guest is the NPP MP for Ablekuma West, the Honorable Esla Owusu Ekufo. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
You're looking very, very good in your traditional attire.
Thank you.
Right, so this morning we're talking about statutory payments and the non-release of it by government. Can you just briefly tell us exactly what statutory payments are?
Thank you. Statutory payments basically are funds set aside by law for specific purposes. Now, the funds of government are made up of all kinds of monies, taxes collected, levies paid, and releases made by all kinds of agencies. But specific laws set aside specific portions of all public funds for specific projects. Now, the Constitution itself sets aside 5% for district assemblies, and that is what is put into the district assemblies common fund, and it is distributed in proportions, percentages determined by Parliament. That's one. The Get Fund Act also sets aside 2.5% of all VAT collected, in addition to other sources of revenue, for education-related purposes. In the same vein, the VAT Act was also amended to set a proportion of all VAT collected aside for the health insurance fund. Now, these three funds are specific funds set up for specific projects: health insurance, provision of health insurance, development of the district assemblies, i.e. the districts through the district assemblies, and then the development of educational facilities through the Get Fund. The reason why they are tagged statutory funds is because they are specifically provided for by either the Constitution or by Acts of Parliament, and these are statutes.
Right, so government has an obligation to pay these monies. It's not a privilege for these beneficiaries. Government is supposed to, they are mandated to pay these monies.
Absolutely. Government has a legal obligation to pay these monies. Now, if I may just read Article 252 of the Constitution, which deals with the District Assembly's Common Fund. It says, there shall be a fund to be known as the District Assembly's Common Fund. Then 2, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, Parliament shall annually make provision for the allocation of not less than 5% of the total revenues of Ghana to the District Assembly. So, for the District Assembly's Common Fund, it is a constitutional obligation for the government to pay. And the government doesn't have the luxury of deciding whether or not to pay.
Right. Now, I know up until about July of this year, some of these funds hadn't been paid, but I believe government just released about 370 million for some of these to be paid. But before then, there was a lot of agitation, people requesting for their monies to be paid, and government comes up with the excuse that the money is just not available. But from what you're telling us, these monies have been set aside, monies that we have paid as taxes and so on and so forth. So what legitimate excuse does government have to say that they do not have the money? Where is the money?
Government does not have any excuse to say it does not have the money, because either it is a percentage of VAT collected or it is a percentage of total revenues received. So it is the percentage of the monies that government actually has collected that it is required to pay. So government cannot say it does not have the money. It is not being required to look for money outside to fund these statutory bodies. It is a percentage set aside by law. As at a week ago, I believe, the entire district assemblies, the entire statutory funds due for this year, 2014, had not been paid. For the entire year, it had not been paid. For the district assemblies, what had been paid was the arrears due last year.
Okay, so that was the 370 released in July.
It was the arrears due for the last quarter of last year, which is what was paid. This year, 2014, nothing has come. And so people are asking questions, and MPs legitimately so. If you look at the cholera outbreak which hit most parts of the country this year. It is because the assemblies didn't have money to pay for refuse collection and for fumigation is a different story. I'll come to that later. For cleaning up the cities and the districts.
Just basically doing what they are required
for
to
doing
do
their
to keep
work.
the environment
Absolutely,
clean.
because many districts are dependent on the common fund
right.
to operate.
Okay,
yes.
A few months ago, the GBA as well also demanded that monies owed due the judiciary should be paid. Even the judiciary, for the first time I believe, also came out asking for their monies to be paid. And I believe even Parliament still have some releases due them that haven't been paid. So would you say that, is there a cause for action? So can someone take the government on? Can the administration be sued, for instance?
Yes, it can. Any citizen of Ghana can take the government on for a declaration and an order that they should pay those monies. I believe Richard Nyama took the government on for the non-payment of the Get Fund releases, and he actually got judgment not too long ago. So any citizen of this country can take the government on, and Richard Nyama has shown the way.
Right.
And the
what
government.
about Parliament? Are you taking any steps? Is there anything?
Oh, we have a few questions to ask the finance minister
today,
when he shows up today.
Should
Absolutely.
be a very, very interesting discussion.
We really do have a few, and we shouldn't politicize this. These are releases that the government is enjoined by law to make for the smooth operation of the our health sector and our educational sector and our local governance sector.
Right,
has nothing to do with
let
politics.
me ask you, in your opinion, where do you think these monies are then, are going to? If the monies have been paid or the monies are there, why is government saying it doesn't have the money? I mean, where has the money been channeled to?
It disappeared into a black hole. That's what I call it. Because nobody knows. And government cannot say it doesn't have the money because it has collected those monies. But because of our huge debt repayments, loan repayments, and the government's desire to pay salaries at least, the bulk of revenues that we collect in this country go into servicing of our loans and payment of salaries.
But that is not an excuse. Like you said, it's statutory. They are mandated to pay, so they can't use money set aside for
exactly.
a particular
So you
reason.
take the statutory funds out of
all of
your
these.
Total revenues before you disburse it, which is what government
what
is failing
Parliament's
to do.
role in all of this? What is Parliament doing about this? Because you put out these laws, you put out these rules. So if government is deviating from it, what is your role in here?
And that is why the finance minister is coming to justify why we should even grant him another budget for another year, when he has been unable to abide by the legal requirement to make specific payments for this year. And it is not going to be an easy task for him, I can assure the people of this country, because a lot of members of parliament are very upset on both sides of the house, and parliament does not like being taken for granted. And we are determined that it is not going to be business as usual this time around. So he has to come really prepared with answers that are tenable for the questions that are going to be asked. And it's going to, I foresee an interesting budget cycle this time in Parliament. And I'm urging all my colleagues to work to enable the House fulfill its proper role of financial oversight over the executive. We're not just here to rubber stamp whatever the executive wants. We owe it to the people of Ghana to demonstrate that we take our charge seriously and are determined to do whatever it takes to ensure that whatever monies come in are applied for the purposes for which they are required by law and by according to the needs of the people, not just for showy projects and for political gain or whatever. We have genuine needs: health, education, and development of the local government system. We shouldn't trifle with those things. And so I'm hoping that this time around, and you will see very, very, very interesting debates on both sides of the House, not just on the minority side.
Right. Now, what are some of the consequences of the non-payment or even the delay of these monies? For instance, a body like the judiciary, what does it mean for them when they don't receive these monies that is due them?
We've seen it. Offices of the judiciary which were supposed to be opened across the country have had to be delayed. Provision of basic services to the general populace are delayed or are affected, and that affects the quality of the justice delivery that is given to the people. Not just there, when it comes to health insurance, many health service providers are refusing to accept the cards as payment for services rendered, and they are insisting on cash. So the health needs of the people are being affected. Health service providers are owed millions by the health insurance scheme for services they've already rendered, and so it's even affecting their output for the people who come to see them, and even their payment of their own obligations are also affected since the government owes them. It's the same with Get Fund as well. Contractors are owed millions spanning years, and so that is also passed on. They are also unable to meet their obligations to those that they owe, and you have interest repayments mounting to the banks, and people are losing their homes. People's health is being affected. People are dying because they are of the pressure they're under. It is not good.
Okay, but the truth of the matter is that the economy is in serious financial trouble. Now, some of these money are in serious arrears. So how do you think government is going to be able to make up for this?
They have to cut expenditure. It's classic. Raise revenues, reduce expenditure. The government hasn't demonstrated that it is moderate in reduction of expenditure. When you look at the size of the executive, look at the number of people in the office of the president, and you ask yourself exactly what role are they, what are they doing? What benefit is the nation deriving from all these people in the office of the president? The president has to lead by example. We're going to be required, it's almost inevitable that this budget is going to be a very painful one with minimal gain to Ghanaians in the short term. Maybe in the long term it would help if they can stick to their own prescriptions. They have demonstrated that they are unable to stick to their own prescriptions so far, because most of what they said they would do last year, this year they haven't done. So if the government is unable to reduce its expenditure markedly by reducing the number of ministers they have, the number of presidential staffers, the number of hangers on all over, let them lead by example. Then it will be easy for to tell Ghanaians that, look, I've done A, B, C, or D, so you should also tighten your belt. Why do we have 2 deputy ministers in the Ministry of Gender, or 3 or 4 in a Greek, even finance? If we want to reduce expenditures, we should reduce the number of ministers we have, starting with the deputy ministers and the office of the president. Then the government can be demonstrating that it's done something. So far, it pays salaries, and the releases that should go to ministries, departments, and agencies to enable them to work don't go. So we're paying people and disabling them from working. We're paying people and making sure that they will not work. That's throwing good money away. And these are all things that the government has to look at.
What are you expecting to hear from the finance minister with respect to the statutory payments? What would be a satisfactory answer for you?
He should clear the arrears. I hear that he started talking up the fact that we should amend the law so the government does not have to pay statutory payments. That, I'm afraid, is not a subject for discussion. There is a real need for funds to be set aside for specific purposes in this country. Now, even the government is relying on the Get Fund for work that it should be doing under its budget. So if you're saying let's cut the Get Fund, let's remove what goes to NHIL, then in effect you're telling us that let's collapse our educational system, let's collapse our health systems as well. It is going to be dead on arrival. So I'm telling the minister not to even attempt to go down that way, because it will be resisted.
Clear the arrears and let's move.
Clear the arrears.
Okay, now finally, Honorable, do you have a tag or a phrase for this year's budget reading? I know usually the minority always has some kind of phrase or a tagline like the chia budget and so on and so forth, or whatever.
Well, we're now in our caucus meeting.
Okay, so that's when you decide.
And the tagline will come afterwards. But for me, it will be all pain, no gain budget.
Hey, all pain,
for me, all
no
pain,
gain budget.
no gain
right.
budget.
Okay, thank you so much for your time this morning. I've been talking with the MPP MP for Ablekuma West, Honorable Ursula Owusu Ekupo, and we've been talking about statutory payments or the non-payment of such funds. Anyway, this has been the Chamber live from Parliament House this morning. This is still New Day.